of its identity. When you have identity, you have access to data. Data is actually what they want, not identity. But they have to get the identity to get to the data. I think we all understand this. Also, being very clever, they are using the user side to get to resources, or resources to get to resources. And that's why a lot of customers, which is still a good idea, have gone the approach of putting these anti-malware, anti-ransomware solutions on the endpoint, because they think that's where the problem lies. But if a 20-year-old can break it, and if a 20-year-old can get through it, and if a 20-year-old can get through your firewall, is that really going to solve the problem? No, it's not. Keeping in mind, I'm talking about a hacker getting in, and I'm talking about ransomware. So the subject is about both. I'll break them up just now to give you a better view. And that's what we're trying to say here inside this. Must be a way we can prevent the ransomware and the hacker from getting to those areas, the endpoint to a certain degree. All right? We're not stopping anything at the endpoint. We're now saying, let's focus on what they actually want. All right? Let's assume that you don't have any ransomware or protection on the endpoint. What's the worst case scenario? They're going to get the information off that endpoint. But with us in play, they're still not going to get to your core environment. And that's where multiple of your information exists. Firstly, what are we trying to do? And I've got an example of a hack that we did. I would have loved to play the video, but I wasn't quite sure if it would have worked. But after this slide, we'll go through a couple of examples of what we actually did as an attempt to hack. We want to protect Active Directory. See something out of the ordinary, it starts shutting down the various identities and users. So you know, have you heard of Kerberos attacks, golden ticket attacks? These are the type of things that we're trying to achieve with this type of module. So this is a solution, or a module of a bigger solution. But what this is doing is it's really saying, I want to monitor your Active Directory, and I want to monitor your data. I know what an attack looks like. So whether it doesn't matter what the attack is, there's so many different various versions out there, I know what it looks like. So we don't care how sophisticated the attack gets, we still know what it looks like. And what we're doing here is we're saying, as soon as we see an attack on AD, how can we stop it as quickly as possible? And if we suddenly see an attack on data, how can we get to that as quick as possible? Because what does a ransomware do? It really wants to encrypt your data, send it across, and then people want money out of you, right? That's the ultimate purpose of what it's about. So if our approach limits the amount of encryption they can do, haven't we just saved a lot? And I'll give you an idea of what it is. Any questions on this? Because this is very important. This is the first line, Active Directory. The idea of this approach is they don't even get to the data. So when we do a demo, we actually allow this to go through, but the solution will not even allow you to get to the data because you've already stopped the identity side of it. Yep. When I said this is part of a bigger portfolio, what we're saying, what I'm trying to highlight here is that by solving ransomware, which we're sitting here, this is the area of where we started protecting the AD, all right? Security and auditing. We have a concept which is called Get Back to Basics. How can you possibly achieve full investment in any great technology that requires access to AD if AD is not audited and cleaned up? How can you achieve data compliance if you haven't even done a data governance access project, which is data discovery and classification? You know, if you're going to implement a DLP solution and you haven't done phase 1, your DLP solution will never work. And this is what I'm showing you here. We started here, but without you actually focusing on it, you've started another journey, which is cleaning up AD. As soon as you go through this process, all the solutions that you've already invested in will function at their optimum. Why? Because now they've got full, proper AD to work with. And this is less impact on your IT resources because they've got a fully functional AD. But it doesn't mean we have to start there. We can start here. And that's what I'm getting about the strategy. Starting here, but you've started another strategy, which is getting back to basics and cleaning up your AD. This is the option where we implement agents onto all the servers, and they sit there and monitor the data. And what is it that they're trying to do? Is they're waiting for that first encryption. Because again, what does ransomware do? It doesn't matter what flavor it comes in, it's trying to encrypt the data. So let's say they got past that AD phase that I've just gone through. The next one is to access the data. Worst case scenario, if you've got, and the test we did is we had 50,000 files in a server. We only lost 100 files. So worst case scenario, you might lose 100 files out of say 50,000 in our experiment when this process runs. Because it suddenly notices there's unauthorized access or unauthorized encryption of information. And it shuts down everything. So they've got a thing called a concept of playbooks. And what a playbook does, it says if such and such, and this is how developer thinks again, if this occurs, perform such and such an action. Right? And that's what we're doing here. We're saying as soon as you see an encryption, notify the AD one and shut down the identity that started the encryption process, the identity that was created or the identity that was hacked. Remember, a hacker can come in and create his own identity. Why? Because what does IT do is they take a whole lot of existing Active Directory names and they just duplicate them. So how many AD entries do you have which are just duplicated and you don't know certain people have got certain access which they shouldn't have? And this is where the problem starts. So again, I stress clean up AD. So what this is doing, this is saying, I've notified or I've seen that there's an encryption attack. I'm going to shut it down. I may have lost a couple of files, right? And it does it across all your servers. Unix, Windows, cloud, doesn't really matter. Shuts it down. And at the same time, it's talking to the AD module and saying, hey, this guy is new or is an existing person. Shut the user down. If that user is physically connected to the network and online, suddenly everything will drop. Or the playbook says, shut down the user and shut the server down so we don't have anything spreading. It will shut down the whole server immediately. Again, the choice is, do you want to break out or do you want to shut down the server for a while you sort out the problem? Our approach is stop the thing as quick as possible by any means. Right. That's what we're doing here, is we're putting the agents, the listening agents onto the systems. But it's this module. Remember I was referring to data governance and data access governance? What happens if the whole strategy or the whole system is an actual data governance, data access governance solution? You have to do this for compliance. It's a good thing cleaning up your environment. It's a good thing classifying information and handing over the responsibility to business units and not to IT. That's what this is all about. It's a good thing knowing who's got access to your data or to your folders. And then it's a good thing to protect it against ransomware or unauthorized access. Now we're forming a strategy. This is the second portion of our Get Back to Basics. Clean up AD, clean up your data. Everything else works seamlessly forward. And that's what we're doing here. So this is the example. Let me run through it quickly. I've got this on video if anybody's interested, and I can show you the real live process that they did. Test this solution, and he couldn't hack it. And that's what we were showing you here, is we were showing a live attack onto a system that was purposely built to be open. And he managed to get this through. So what this is doing, this is Kerber roasting. And what happened here, well, by the way, this is part of the system that you're looking at the moment, is that it's noticed that there was another AD identity created. It wasn't somebody who hacked a previous one. Somehow the hacker got in and they created a new identity. And that identity had access to all the data. And what we're showing you here with this process is the system identifying this new identity that was not supposed to be there, not part of the system. And during the demo, we identified where it came from, what it was, what the risk was. This was actually a ransomware that did it. What the ransomware was, so now we start getting a full detail and breakdown of what is actually happening with that particular attack. No view of doing it, it's very automatic, but because it was a demo, we had to show, and you have a whole host of playbooks saying, in this instance, do this, in that instance, do that. And you can mix and match them and decide how severe you want the action to be. And you can do it by attack. You know, golden ticket is probably the worst attack that you can get. It's very high, and so is Kerber roasting. So you might want to have more severe playbooks when you see that type of attack, because this thing identifies what the attack is, not just the fact that there's an attack. Again, more details on the information of where it came from, who the person was. And that's what we were showing here, is that we now identified that there was this name that was created in the system, but was added, it wasn't part of the system. So nobody would have known if there wasn't something monitoring AD. And then they shut this down. This would, in all intents and purposes, be step one, and nothing would happen further. And then the data would be safe. There wouldn't even be an attack. But here we were just showing that we allowed the attack. So our playbook was don't do anything. And we allowed the attack. This was 50,000 files, 375 were encrypted. 375 10 kilobit files were encrypted. If its first file was, say, a gig, it wouldn't have even been able to finish the encryption of 1 gig. But we showed it with very small files and it managed to get through to 375. And then the system kicked in and it shut down. In this demo, they actually went and shut down the server and we showed the user that was logged on and it shut down the user. And you could see the person's PC shut down and they were disconnected from the environment because they were the risk. Why? Because the attack came from an endpoint. So we want to stop the endpoint. Okay.